Today is 27th of September, which means that it's been exactly a year since Counter-Strike 2 has been officially released as a game. You know, in 1 year a lot of things could change, positively and negatively. But as always, CS2 breaks all of the standards since it hasn't changed a bit during this year. Yeah, we had our small insignificant improvements, but overall the main issues that pros and the community were complaining about a year ago are still in the game, and today we're gonna break everything down and try to figure out what is currently happening with our game. This meme directly demonstrates the situation in CS2, but what I really don't understand is why people are blaming Valve for not making the game better. Don't blame Valve as a company, blame only CS2 developers, since Deadlock and Dota 2 are doing amazing. There is also someone else to be blamed, but later about that. But HaiX, CS2 is still a #1 game in terms of daily player count. Well, my dear 12-year-old 3400 premier rating TikTok NPC with an attention span of 0.6 seconds, you're right. But have you ever thought why? Well, of course not, because you don't have a functioning brain. I've done my research and asked over 20,000 people from my Discord server and X page about why they actually still play this game. And believe it or not, their answers were very similar to each other. Either to get weekly drops and farm some free money off the game, or they simply don't have any replacement game, since Valorant is not really an option for the majority of CS players, and what are other alternatives? Deadlock and Dota 2? Yeah, maybe, but these games require a lot of understanding and learning the game from complete beginning, and of course brain usage, which as we know CS2 players don't really have. Let's face the harsh reality, CS2 is a game that Valve don't love. Imagine that the developers are parents and the game is their child.
It's SpongeBob!
This meme, again, directly represents how parents treat their child. But if we dig even deeper, originally CS wasn't even made by Valve. It was a modification for Half-Life, but that is a discussion for another topic. People who don't play Counter-Strike have a pretty popular opinion that the game has only two main directions, esports and gambling. But people who play the game know that Counter-Strike was always a game with a huge community and lots of interesting directions and even their cultures. But for the last 5 or even more years, CS2 devs were really clear with the direction of the game. They want to make Counter-Strike as much esports oriented as it's physically possible, and that is our main problem. I mean, think about it, for the last 5 years in CSGO, we barely got any content updates, barely any gameplay changes, sometimes new maps, but never anything game-changing. And if you're searching for someone to blame on why Counter-Strike today is the most boring, unoriginal and broken game in the 25 years of its existence, don't only blame the developers. People who are equally responsible for this are the pro players, since they are the ones who have direct access to the developers, yet do nothing since it's not allowed in their contracts to say bad things about the game. And I personally don't blame them, since I totally understand their situation. You don't want to lose your income and reputation, and you need to think about yourself firstly. Trust me, I understand. Don't forget that I live in Russia, and for the last 2.5 years I'm daily getting blamed and receiving death threats for things that I'm incapable of changing. But my point is, it's not only the developers who are responsible for the current state of the game. Let's be real, Counter-Strike is a perfect game for esports. And every competitive game developers dream about their games being played on big stages with lots of fans and millions of dollars of investments every year. This was the main thing that kept Counter-Strike alive even 25 years ago. All what Valve had to do is to keep the game balanced and let the players do their thing. But let's be real, you can't really expect people to enjoy the same thing for 25 years in a row. When I started playing the game, CS was fun, enjoyable and interesting, but right now it's a very dry product for an oddly dedicated audience. People who are only interested in improving and try hard in the game will always be there, but that is never the majority of the players. Most of the players are casual. They are interested in playing new maps, new game modes and having fun with friends. This is what games are for the majority of us. I was a tryhard player back in the day, but I burned out in half a year. It became incredibly repetitive playing the same maps, same positions and same weapons for 10 hours a day. But you know what's interesting? I remember when I started playing CS in 2012, the game wasn't going towards this super sweaty esports direction. Many of you remember maps like Italy, Assault, Militia, Insurgent 1 and 2. Those maps were creative, interesting, and brought fresh air into the gameplay. And most importantly, it showed us that the developers are trying to bring new stuff only for casual players, since hostage maps were never a part of esports. But nowadays, CS is more about clicking the same pixels and throwing the same set of utility on Mirage for years. But again, since esports became such a big thing, Valve decided to accept it and move on with the flow. I said it myself many times, esports is one of the biggest factors that makes any game alive. But when you only focus on esports part of the game, you lose everything else, and Counter-Strike had this everything else and it's losing it. Who of you actually remember the latest CSGO operations? It was fun for a week and then it became repetitive MMORPG type of a grind. But who of you remember the old operations with missions and the variety of content? I mean, in 2016 I even got a Dragon Lore as an in-game drop in one of them.
Dude, I just got a factory new Dragon Lore from drop from operation.
It's minimal wear. Obi, how angry are you gonna be? HaiX just got a minimal wear Dragon Lore from the operation drop.
But Valve removed expensive skin drops during games, and nowadays I can get an expensive skin like that only on Skin Club. But you have to be 18 plus to play on a site. They're one of the biggest case opening sites out there with instant withdrawal system. They got daily cases to open, lots of fun game modes to choose from, and a huge variety of deposit methods. I played on a site myself, and as you can see, I managed to profit in a matter of seconds. After that, I tried my luck in case battles where I instantly won in a 2 vs 2. And then, I withdrew my skins and immediately got them in my inventory. If you wanna check them out, use my link in the description for a deposit bonus, and now let's get on with the video. When CS2 was announced, the community became so incredibly hyped about an insane potential of this game, especially without the old spaghetti code. Because this spaghetti code was a great excuse for the developers in terms of being unable to provide us with new content. And that is why community understood that CS was focusing on its esports part instead of its casual part for people who want to play different game modes or just have fun. But the most interesting part here is that since Valve decided to focus on esports part of the game, then their main priority would be to make the most optimized and perfectly netcoded game without bugs, right? But even here, everything is, well, not terrible, but definitely not good. The technical part of CS2 is not awful, but not a single person in the world with a functioning brain will agree that it's even close to being perfect. Outside of its poor netcoding, one of the biggest issues of CS2 is its poor optimization. I'm not gonna go too much into details, but there are a lot of people who were capable of playing CSGO, but they simply can't play CS2 because of its low FPS. And people with good PCs can't get the game going as smooth as it was in CSGO because of a thing called frame time. Again, not trying to be nerdy here, but CS2 has the highest frame time of 6 milliseconds in all of the current FPS games. While, for example, in Valorant, it's 2/3 milliseconds even in the most loaded scenarios. So even technically, Valorant is 2/3 times smoother than CS2. And no one knows who to blame. It could be the engine that doesn't work with the game properly because it's made from the parts of the code of CSGO, Dota 2 and Half-Life Alyx, or it was just a bad job by the developers of optimizing the game. All of that doesn't matter because the technical part of the game remains bad, which leads us to even pro players mentioning it. For example, the recent interview of Alexi B, who was asked to name one thing that he likes in CS2 and in CSGO. In CS2, he likes the dynamic smokes, which is actually a huge change to the gameplay. But when it came to CSGO, Alexi B just offered everyone to download the game and shoot some bots on offline maps, and you will understand how crisp and responsible the game is. The funny part here is that CS2 developers actually listened to this interview and released an update where they brought this crisp feeling of shooting bots on offline servers back, but that made the situation even worse. Now we have an ability to have a good quality warm-up, but then we jump into online matches where everything is broken again. Imagine that you are given a 240 or 360Hz monitor and you warm up with it, but when you jump into the actual game, your refresh rate is set back to 60. This entire situation and this update represents the fact that Counter-Strike devs listen to pros, just as I mentioned in the beginning, but pros don't speak enough of how bad the game is and what has to be fixed. Let's address one of the biggest optimization issues that's in the game for a year: water on Ancient. The same FPS drop that people were experiencing a year ago is still in the game. It hasn't changed a bit, and the fun part is that if you have an FPS counter on your screen, when it lowers, you can get a competitive advantage by knowing that multiple enemies are near beside, because the engine of the game can't properly work when multiple people are running near water. CSGO was always the game that worked on different sorts of hardware, and I remember so many optimization tricks that have done miracles to people with bad PCs and boosted their FPS by a lot. In CS2, you need a minimum of RTX 3080 Ti and Ryzen 7800X3D for it to work on 250 stable FPS on any map. But of course, the FPS won't stop people with bad PCs from opening loot boxes, so it's all good and shouldn't be addressed as an issue. Not long ago, some nerds found lines of code in recent updates mentioning Danger Zone. And for God's sake, please tell me what makes you think that bringing Danger Zone will make the game better. All of your Danger Zone games will be automatically filled with 18 spin botters since the game doesn't have a working anti-cheat, or at least Overwatch. I mean, we got teased with the Overwatch stuff 5 months ago. They said that they will give it to some trusted partners, whatever that means, and where is it? Who are the trusted partners? Complete silence. And don't even get me started with seasons in Premiere. When is it gonna be season 2? How long will the seasons be in general? Complete silence again. Even if tomorrow we will get an Operation and Danger Zone, it won't change the fact that CS2 will remain a repetitive simulator of executing the same smokes on Mirage. The community will be happy for a week, and then the same problems will show up again. Cheaters, bad optimization, poor gameplay. I mean, the biggest CS content creators are massively quitting the game or simply not playing it. Onapixel is playing Deadlock or just co-streaming games, Anomaly is trading skins, Neok just watches cheater demos, and so on. If you truly want to see how boring CS2 is right now, then look at the content that is being produced on YouTube and the interest of the community in it. 80% of that is esports, and 20% is Nate King, Dima and me trying our best to push the limits of our brain to make something unique, interesting and entertaining, because people are simply not interested in watching just the game. Just ask yourself, outside of an esport event, when was the last time you were genuinely interested in watching Counter-Strike gameplay? Personally for me, I haven't watched a single esports event since the release of CS2, and I watched a few donk streams here and there. I mostly force myself to watch silver demos, but again, that's what I'm getting paid for. For a regular player, it's even more rough. But let's move on. What you see on your screen right now is the footage of a map called Train that was shown to us with the trailer of CS2 on 22nd of March. This map is still not in the game. I personally have came to the conclusion that people nowadays are interested in more complicated games with lots of possible outcomes and variety of gameplay. That is why I personally enjoy Dota 2 and Deadlock in my free time so much. I have way more motivation in learning countless possibilities of playing different characters, items and gameplay options, rather than learning the same 300 pre-fire spots on Mirage. But of course, people still need games with understandable and simple gameplay. But here's the tricky part: the simpler the game, the harder it is to make more interesting. In CSGO, even with lack of updates, I enjoyed the gameplay part and the variety of content options there. Maps, plugins, and lots of community servers. In the last year of CS2, I came to the understanding that this game for me will be nothing more than a job. My dream was always to be a content creator and to make unique and interesting ideas with insanely high quality editing. And I will remain doing it. I simply won't play the game outside of the times when I need to make a video. I don't see a single reason on why I should continue playing this game. And the saddest part here is that I'm sure that pretty much every person who is watching this video has an understanding on what has to be added in the game for it to become more interesting and enjoyable again. And I'm certain that most of our ideas would be very similar. Things like anti-cheat, Overwatch, optimization, and lots of other basic stuff. Everyone seems to understand it. Everyone, but not the developers. Today is 27th of September, which means that it has been a year since Counter-Strike 2 was officially released, but it also means that it has been 180 days since my Twitch ban. Today I'm appealing for my Twitch unban again, since you're allowed to do that once in 180 days. I pray to God that my ban will be removed because I truly learned my lesson this time. If that happens, I would really appreciate you checking out my stream and saying hi, since I'm gonna have to pretty much rebuild my viewership from scratch. In case it doesn't happen, I will continue making videos for you, and I'd really appreciate if you subscribe to this channel. God bless you, I'm out.